Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this narration of the web series The Nature of Predators, taken from r/HFY. If you are new to the series, there is a playlist listed in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Memory transcript subject, UN Secretary General Elias Meyer. Date, Standardized Human Time, July 13th, 2136. The 2136th Climate Change Summit was the latest in an ongoing saga, complete with usual finger-pointing and empty promises. The United Nations had taken on a role as a central world government following the satellite wars of the late 21st century. Russia, China, and the United States were still rebuilding their crippled power grids in its aftermath. After realizing the extent of our dependence on technology, the world's countries signed a treaty of Shanghai to govern cyber warfare. As part of the accord, the UN was given greater authority to mediate disputes, in the hopes of preventing escalation in the future. Following several natural disasters this year, the General Assembly convened to discuss solutions. Investment in fusion energy was the main item on the docket, though I doubted any parties would commit beyond fancy words. Despite my jaded view as UN Secretary General, my presence was mandatory at all of these events. I was zoned out while the Canadian ambassador spoke, nodding and smiling every now and then to keep up appearances. An aide tapped me on the shoulder, startling me out of my trance. "Sir," she whispered, "I need you to come with me." What was so important that it couldn't wait an hour? My staff were instructed to only approach in an emergency. There was a brief moment of worry, as I wondered whether there was a credible threat to my life. My security details seemed relaxed, though, so that likely was not the case. I followed her into the briefing room when several serious-looking individuals were waiting. The amount of military personnel present made me think of some conflict had erupted. The strange thing was that the representatives of the various space agencies were present, including the ESA, NASA, and CNSA. The gears started to turn in my head. The first extrasolar mission had departed a few weeks ago. They weren't supposed to return for months. Something must have gone wrong. I settled down at the head of the mahogany table. "Quite the crowd you've got here. Could someone please fill me in?" The Odyssey crew made contact with an extraterrestrials. A short-haired woman in a leather jacket passed me a folder. Her name tag read Dr. Casper Arnholtz. "They call themselves the Venel. According to our new friends, there are hundreds of other intelligent species out there. We're not alone, Mr. Secretary. This is the biggest news of all time." I leafed through the dossier, taking a moment to process the news. The first page was a grainy image of the astronaut standing with a group of Venel. The aliens were bipedal like us, but that's where the similarities ended. They had woolly grey fur, side-facing eyes, and spindly legs that bent inwards. I wasn't even sure if they had noses. Any information released to the public needed to be handled with the utmost care. Science fiction had gotten people used to the idea of aliens, but the revelation of hundreds of species at once, that would shatter any notion of humanity being special. Some people would be frightened, and we needed to make sure that they looked to us for answers. The last thing we needed for the conspiracy theorists and UFO hunters to take control of the discussion. The situation could be devolved into a panic fest. Not to mention how delicate communications with aliens would be. Their culture was entirely new. We could offend them without even realizing it. It was no small task ahead of us, learning their language, establishing diplomatic relations, and monitoring potential threats. It was to be work of an entire generation. "I count at least 40 generals in this room, which seems unnecessary," I said at last. "Are the aliens friendly?" Dr. Casper frowned. "It's not so simple, I'm afraid." "What do you mean? That shouldn't be a hard question." I'd been expecting a yes, not a non-committal reply. My heart sank as the implication hit me. Either they're friendly or they're hostile. "The aliens are friendly, except for one species. That species is at war with the rest of the galaxy, and they're quite the formidable foe. They've wiped out 62 worlds, and fighting them at the cost of billions of lives. They destroyed 62 planets by themselves, Jesus Christ. Please tell me you're kidding." "I wish, sir. There's a full briefing page labeled Orcs in your file. There's also footage of them committing every war crime in the book. I mean, they literally eat children." "Shit. Let's face it, we're barely space-sparing. We need to hammer out alliances with other aliens pronto. I want every diplomat relegated to this project. Well, that's the thing, sir. Dr. Comfer gave me an apologetic smile, as though she was about to give more bad news. How could this get worse? The Federation is afraid of us. The Venlil governor thinks that they wouldn't want our friendship, even with her blessing. In fact, she says that they might attack us on sight. Why exactly? I asked. Humans are predators, and the only other intelligent predator, let me guess, the Oxor, I sighed. The SETI researcher nodded. With a heavy heart, I leaned back in my chair. Humans could be petty and violent, but even on our worst days, we didn't eat children. You could at least give us that. A bitter smirk played on my lips. So I'm hearing not to invite the Venlil to a family barbecue. Yes, Doctor. Dr. Comfer stilted a laugh. And not to make that comment of them either, sir. I doubt that they'd be amused. The poor Phobals thought that we were there to kill them. But we won them over, didn't we? Are you certain that we can't bring the Federation around too? I don't like the odds, us taking out on a technologically superior species alone. I'm positive. Tava was quite emphatic. Our astronauts say her primary concern was for the safety of Earth as a whole. She believed that there would be some drastic overreactions. After what they've been through, I can't say that I blame them. In that case, humanity shouldn't expect a welcome party from our neighbors. It was a shame our evolutionary link with the Author precluded that possibility, or even the prospect of civil relations. The fact that first contact hadn't ended in violence was miraculous by the sound of it. Things could have fallen apart without the astronauts ever realizing why. We'd only know the aliens attacked a research vessel without cause. This would be a very different briefing. I made a mental note to give Governor Tava a proper thanks for staying her hand and filling us in. While I didn't want to rule out swaying the aliens, gambling with Earth's security was out of the question. Mankind were on our own against a genocidal scourge. Well then, this is a rare occasion. I'm open to suggestions from the Peanut Gallery. My eyes locked with the American and Chinese generals, who appeared to be discussing something. Do you have a proposal? General Zhao cleared his throat. It's not all bad news. From what we've seen, the Federation's tactics and weapons are subpar. We should spend a few months building a proper fleet and running joint exercises. I think we can catch the Oxo by surprise. We might stand a chance. I agree. General Jones offered a supportive nod, and I raised an eyebrow at her. This might be the first time I'd seen the US and China work together since the war. Once we're ready, UN forces can coordinate an offensive. We found several targets, including planets where sentients are bred for food. A ground assault is the perfect way to test our forces without showing our hand. We don't want to overcommit, General Zhao added. If we can liberate some Federation citizens and bring them home, it might buy us some goodwill. We all agree that the Oxor are a menace, but I must ask, should we really get involved at all? I paused, choosing my next words carefully. So far, they've let us alone. By launching an attack, we'll be announcing our presence to those monsters. We drag Earth into an intergalactic war and risk untold human lives. Do we chance becoming Dead World number 63, or a bunch of aliens who hate us? In my opinion, they'll come for us eventually. We either fight them now or we fight them later, General Jones replied. The difference is, if we choose later, we won't have anyone to stand with us. The Federation is not faring well. I grimaced. The Oxal sadism was bound to awaken unsavory sentiments when it was plastered across the airwaves. How were we going to prevent widespread hysteria? My original plan was to break this discovery to the masses gradually, but with such a serious crisis, people deserved fair warning. After all, humanity's existence hinged on the decisions that were made today. I hoped the public could handle the truth. If we're going to do this, we need unity at home. People need to know what they're signing up for. I pressed a hand to my temple, trying to suppress the growing headache. Release everything to the public and let them make the decision. If there's broad support for the war, then we'll fight the bastards. Perhaps the revelation of aliens would make us set aside our differences and face this threat as a united species. As far as I knew, Earth only had one chance to get this right. And I would just quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and patrons. Casper Arnholtz, Maxwell, Barkey, it's difficult to pronounce, Lord Azrakul, and Arcadian.